This is Near Enough to Hell, a Ghost of El Paso story, part 16. We don't have a Daniel. Also, we have Wes getting costumed up because they felt so insecure around two of our other performers who are wearing fancy clothes.
I told you that in confidence about my insecurity, and now you're broadcasting it to the entire world. What the fuck is wrong with you, Rybitski?
Content. All
Oh
right.
shit, I'm not muted.
You're not muted. No, that was live. Well, recorded live. Well, anyway, yeah, so we're down Daniel. He is out taking care of family stuff and encourage us to play without Diamond Dave. So we are going to carry on with the Vigilance Committee as it stands. We had ended during the Dawn phase. We'd already done XP, I believe, although someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And folks can mark new elected Dawn questions. And I don't believe we have any moves that trigger during the Dawn phase, but please, again, correct me if I'm wrong. And did we have any lingering Janice mask prompts? No? All right. The only thing that we have left to resolve during the Dawn phase is a matter of rewards, or I should say a reward, because the side threat that was resolved last session, the strange case of Bartholomew Graves, which it was determined that Graves' own family were responsible for paying off the outlaws who shot him dead some time ago. They were apprehended, and there is a reward available for that one, similar to how the Reaver's last victim works in the between. There's just the one. Now in that one, which I did take a lot of inspiration from, it is a mask. I'm not doing a mask for this one only because I didn't think of one. But the reward for solving the strange case of Bartholomew Graves, chaotic, is simply you get to ask. I didn't write this in official game text, so like the phrasing here is like weird, but basically, it's similar to how we were doing the clues this whole time, but instead of the table, it's like take the vulnerable move, right? You get to ask Graves, you can ask Benar a question about Graves, and their answer is going to be your choice of either an item for your personal quarters or a clue that can be used for any future threat.
Okay, so that's just in my back pocket now.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's something you take away extra from that. So think on what you want to ask, and the answer Graves provides. We will circle back to that. I want to take a moment to recap the state of not only our hunters, but also El Paso thus far as well. Looking at our playbooks, Mother Ruth Calvo is only most beloved, otherwise free of conditions. But is getting low on masks. How delicious. Graves is stacked. In addition to Death Touch, still has You Left the Dead Alone from Clear Springs. I almost like Clearwater Springs. And the most recent condition you have is an Omen of the Vrykalakas, which we'll talk about here again in a moment. And Andrew Harrington just has his arm in a sling. No other conditions at the moment. Let's carry on my newfound tradition of handling stuff this way, especially because it's been a couple weeks and I'm rusty. Gonna go in playbook order here, and I want you to tell us what your hunter got up to last time, to the best of your memory. Starting with Mother Ruth.
Oh God, what did she do? What did she do? What did she do?
I believe we only did a night phase last time.
We only did the night phase, and it was a lot of going out to Fort Bliss, I believe, with Graves to deal with some, just kind of figuring out and assess what the whole state of the place was there. Mother Calvo starting to lean into the vices that were riding heavily upon her conscience and everything. She decided to let loose a little bit, let him go, let him out, purge the demons a little bit, start drinking a little bit. And as Graves and Mother Calvo were introduced to this so-called man, this officer in charge of the Texas Rangers there at Fort Bliss, realized that without showing a little leg, maybe a little titty, would have to get some information from him, just a little bit. Just a little bit, which led to Mother Calvo being separated from Graves as Graves got to investigate the fort in more detail, as Mother Calvo had her fort investigated in more detail by the head of these Texas Rangers in a chapel, um, and had him confess his sins. So yeah,
Very fun. Boo, but also very fun.
Boo.
Graves.
don't knock it till you try it.
Oh, Graves isn't knocking it. He got distracted actually by Mother Ruth Calvo, and did not actually get to do any good investigating until she was off in the church doing her very sacred work, her sacred calling, if you will, because Graves is easily distracted, in that way. Listen, it's hard to be mortal, but when Mother Ruth was safely away, who Diamond Dave sent somebody with us, a big old man.
Yes, I believe Flapjack Houlihan.
Flapjack Houlihan. All right, me and Flapjack Houlihan, who I think Graves is still unsure about. Went straight around the fort, found a photographer, because Graves is still trying to keep good, like on the agreement he made with Miss Edwards about low-key sabotaging the other story. Low-key, not like a whole lot, just a little bit of sabotage. And ended up actually talking to this guy, and I believe he mentioned he couldn't get good photos during the wounded night because ghosts. He wasn't sure he believed in the ghosts, and we were like, no, it's for real, for sure, the fucking ghosts. I don't know where the actual reporter is. I can't remember exactly where we left off with that cat. It might have been there.
If I recall correctly, he had mentioned that Mel was her name.
Yes.
Was out
She's out doing something.
wanting to poke around Sawtooth Ridge and the surrounding
Yeah.
environs. Yeah, it was like just like hiking around the mountain and looking at stuff
At
and
night, like a
yeah.
bananas person. Yeah, so we'll see if Mel survived.
Indeed. Not to mention the fascinating little clue we gave you, which was a photograph of the 4 Texas Rangers, the 3 ghost ones and Jimmy Pike, and a 5th unknown ranger. But unmistakably to the eyes of an immortal such as yourself, you had this sinking feeling that this photograph was taken by a most terribly unique camera, one that is not supposed to be anywhere near these parts. And that is where your condition and omen of the Vrykalakas came from. Yeah. All right. Lastly, Andrew.
Andrew continues the tradition to remind everyone that he is a protagonist and not a good guy. He is the villain of the story. So he conspired with Diamond Dave to arrest Graves' family without Graves knowing, as he do. However, Andrew Harrington thinking, oh man, we need to get a drop on them, and they can't know that I'm coming. So he decided to disguise himself as Del Sol. And then everything went to shit because Miss Hargrave Steele decided, oh no, that can't be going on. Del Sol can't be walking around out here. Let's try to capture him. So Harrington had a little bit of a conversation, tried not to reveal his identity, failed horribly. So now, so like I was like, please help. Please help time and day capture these fools. Otherwise, like I don't care how. Either kill them or just arrest them. And so they got arrested, thankfully. And then we sort of left off on Andrew Harrington returning back to the jail, and Miss Hargrave Steele is there and wants to have a very, very nice conversation.
Indeed. Alrighty. So on that note, we're going to begin the day phase. It is the following day in this case. As with all of our day phases, though, where it is necessary, I have to present a new threat. We are running real low on the threat slate. I will say I need to get some additional third-party material. But a new matter has come to your attention. The Blue Boy. Wellington, the butler of Ms. Alma Stackpole, the owner of the El Paso Tin Smelting and Mining Company, comes to the Vigilance Committee with an interesting story. His employer, famously obsessed with Thomas Gainsborough's The Blue Boy, believes she is being regularly visited by the ghost of the Blue Boy himself. In fact, Wellington has seen the ghostly boy with his own eyes, and while he is happy for his employer's spectrally induced joy, he is concerned because she has been spending huge sums of money buying the ghost gifts and making sure it lives in the luxury and comfort it was accustomed to in life. A question for one of our hunters. Mother Calvo. A detail in Wellington's story makes you think the Blue Boy haunting is a hoax designed to separate Alma from her money. What is it? You're muted.
There were signs of footprints near the area, which wouldn't be, typically like seen with like spectral entities unless it was spectral footprints, but they were not spectral in nature. They were just actual like boot prints.
Interesting. Marshal Harrington, a detail in Wellington's story makes you think that it might be a genuine haunting. What is it?
God, like with how far we are into the Wounded Knight so far, it's just the sort of idea to Harrington, like it can't be anything but supernatural. But just to like confirm his suspicions even further, there is sort of when you cross the threshold of when in whatever building the Blue Boy is in, the temperature is just always a little bit colder.
Alma Stackpole is a financial pillar of El Paso. Many people in this region depend on her for their livelihood, and so the Vigilance Committee has agreed to look into the matter. The first question of the Blue Boy threat is simply, is the Blue Boy ghost real, or is it a hoax? Complexity 4. There's also a unique special mask for the Blue Boy, the Mask of the Idyll, Idyll, which allows each hunter to narrate a flashback to a time when they enjoyed leisure in a picturesque place. So we have a full slate of threats right now in between the grieving town of Clear Springs, the Ghost Riders of Sawtooth Ridge, and now the Blue Boy. We did previously have an answer for the grieving town of Clear Springs, having decided that the town is bargaining with the river. So therefore we unlock the question of how can it be stopped from harming the living. The Ghost Riders of Sawtooth Ridge, you guys have 4 questions on that for a complexity 4 question of trying to determine why the Ghost Riders want Jimmy Pike dead. So, investigations aplenty to be had. Turning it over to our hunters now, though. Let's go in reverse character keeper order and hear what scenes we're interested in doing today, Marshal Harrington.
Well, I'm probably not going to get too much done investigation because I have to resolve some personal matters, as it were. I have to have a conversation with Miss Hargrave Steele.
Very good. What about you, Graves?
I mean, I think I need to find this reporter, Mel. Especially if she was like walking around a Sawtooth Ridge at night. I think Graves is like, okay, so we're like, this is a recovery for a body at this point. She does not need to be out there by herself. No one does. Especially during the fucking wounded night. But we'll see.
We'll see.
That's my plan. I don't know what Mother Ruth is doing.
Yeah, Mother Ruth, what are you doing?
I'm going to be heading back to Clear Springs. I need to... That's stuff that I need to... I think we need to go back there. I made a promise to go back there, so might as well, you know?
It makes sense to me that Mother Ruth and Graves were probably at Fort Bliss overnight. So once the sun rises over the territory, Mother Ruth can set out to Clear Springs while Graves sets out to walk around the foothills, around the mountains in search of this Mel Brown character, this reporter from a different newspaper. I'm going to, in our chat here, snip. I'm going to show you a picture of the available Lady Antonia side character reward scenes, because, well, I mean, she's here, and if you're going to meet with her, we might as well use our fancy little thing. Let's see. Okay, that's right. Yeah. Of these options, we've done the fourth one. So keep that in mind. While you think on that, let's start with Graves. We see the trail on Sawtooth Ridge, a winding path lined with small scrub conifers going northwest up the ridge. North Mount Franklin looms ahead. And from this vantage point, Graves, you can glimpse Fort Bliss, El Paso, and the Rio Grande over your left shoulder. Let's paint the scene about the trail on Sawtooth Ridge. Something ancient and intelligent used to walk this trail. It died long ago, before there was even the idea of mankind. What remnants of its passing go overlooked by all who walk the trail? Wow, fucking perfect paint the scene question for Death to be experiencing. Holy shit. That's so incredible. Perfect. I didn't even realize that until I was reading it. That's awesome.
So perfect. And in fact, I'll go last.
Okay.
What's up?
The paint the scene question.
Paint the scene.
Yeah.
You want me to post in the chat?
Yeah, no, I can't. I think I think I hicked up. My
no worries,
no worries. Yeah,
no worries at all, dude. All good.
I completely missed all.
I just thought you were sort of intense and deep in thought.
Really deep in focus.
No.
No, paint the scene question for the trail on Sawtooth Ridge. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Got it. Oh, I think that there is a past the some underbrush. caught on a limb that would be unseen unless you went off the trail, and there's no reason for you to go off the trail. I think that there is a big flap of shedded skin. Scaled in quality, probably.
The trail itself is made out of footprints, but however, none nowadays recognize them as footprints because they mark no living creature shape.
And as death rides down this trail, there is maybe it's the wounded knight, maybe it's because of what it is, but it sees this almost shimmering quality like fog and just occasional glimpses of the things that used to walk here and the things that death used to lead to the other side. Almost just like they're still walking the trail.
Very good. Graves, as you ascend the mountain trail, nearby a skittish varmint pokes its head from beneath a rock, looks at you, and then quickly retreats. You smell smoke, lightly tinting the air, the remnants perhaps of an old campfire from the night before, or perhaps the one that is recently stoked this morning. It is small and it is not particularly of note, but you smell it on the air clear as day. You're somewhere near the El Paso Tin Smelting and Mining Company campsite, but you're still a little ways off from that, and that would probably be a busier place. So as you kind of like come up along the ridge here, I think you see a campsite, a couple of mules hitched up, and a single tent, a little fire pit, and a couple of bags dropped around, lying on a padded little bedroll in the open air, hat perched on his face. You see the loudly snoring Bert Stevens, the photographer you spoke with before at Fort Bliss last night, still like holding an armful of like camera equipment and like supplies as his chest slowly rises and falls. But you hear kind of like a motion from like within the tent. It seems that you're not in search of a body, because it seems like they camped out up here, and this is where Mel can be found. What do you do?
Well, excellent. This is, I mean, good's a strong word because I didn't really care. It's kind of neutral. You know, if you're gonna die, you're gonna die. But she's not, and that means I can actually talk to her easily. And I just sort of, I ride up on the horse, not too close, not to be like, you know, aggressive. Get off the horse. You know, it's a good horse. It'll be fine. And wait to see if Mel comes out. And because I assume this is who's with Bert, or wait for the person to come out. So if they don't come out in a few minutes, I'm going to just sort of nudge Bert with my boot.
He stirs slightly, and starts actually, and as he reaches up to like, you know, instinctively like grab the hat that's resting on his face, a bunch of his like held equipment just like rolls off of his chest and you know, clatters around to the dirt, and he like a turtle on its back has like, you know, flails for a moment before he like gets the hat off of his head, eyes wide and alert, but, you know, bloodshot from a haggard late night. And as like the clatter of equipment happens, you hear from inside the tent, "God damn it, Bert!" And throwing open the flap, you see this, who you assume to be Mel Brown. She is a tan woman. Her face is creased with a various array of lines. Despite the camping, she is garbed in a simple dress, though it has a nice little red bow in the back. And she has a straw hat that she has, like, it's like tied around her neck and like worn on her back for like traveling in the sun. She, like, flips open the tent flap, and face just scrunched up as if ready to chew out Bert, but like sees you standing there as like Bert's like fumbling around to pick up the things he like dropped, and Mel rests a hand on her hip and looks at you and says, "Now, who the fuck are you?"
Bartholomew Graves. I met your friend, Mr. It's Stevens, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, Graves would remember. My brain doesn't. I met your friend, Mr. Stevens, last night, and I heard you were up here walking around Sawtooth Ridge in the middle of the night by yourself, so I thought I'd see how things were going.
Now, what of any business is that of yours, might I ask? What's your name? You said Bartholomew Cocksucker?
Oh, I like this. It doesn't matter what my name is. I'm part of the Vigilance Committee in El Paso. This is very much my business.
Vigilance Committee? Is that some sort of like local fucking militia? Is that like the shit y'all put together because you got someone who fucked a goat and you need to round up the posse to hang him before dawn?
Not quite those
Vigilance
material
Committee.
matters.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah, Bert, pick up your shit off the ground. And he's like rolling around, so like scooping things up, and grunts out like a yes, Mel, you got it, Mel. And she walks over to like a little, I think like it's like a little tin dish, like not like a mess dish or anything, but like that she's like filled with like water, and just like scoops them in her hand, like just splashes it on her face. And adjusts her hat on her head over the morning sun as it's coming down on her. And she just kind of like breezes right past you and goes up over to like one of the two mules, and is just like settling bags and going through supplies, just seemingly going about her own business while you're here. But she's not ignoring you. She continues to speak out loud, as she's just being like, "Well, whatever it is I can do for you, I'd be interested to hear, on account of the fact that I am not from El Paso and merely passing through on matters of my own. So by all means, enlighten me."
Well, I heard you were investigating matters that are mutually interesting to the both of us.
She stops and turns. So I look at you. There's an interested gleam in her eye. And she says, "And what mutually fucking interesting matters would those be, Mr. Graves?"
I think you know.
Huh. God, that's fucking annoying. We don't have to do this little pussyfooting, alluding hither and thither. Go ahead. Say what you mean. Say it out loud. I know what you're talking about. You know what I'm thinking about. Cut the bullshit. Right? Mr. Graves, I'm a reporter. Do you know what that fucking means? It means I got to deal with a lot of bullshit, and I got to write a lot of fucking text that is fluff aplenty, and I need to cut out all of the horse shit and get to the shit that people actually want to read, or at least can hold their pitiful fucking attention. So let's not waste each other's time. Speak plain, and I'll give you the same courtesy. Fuckface.
How charming. The Rangers.
Yeah.
I'm looking for them. I'm
She
looking for
nods.
information about them. And I hear you're looking into them. And
Damn right.
yes, and so I would like to know if you've seen them, what you know, what an outside perspective has, because we're looking to not write stories about them, but to deal with them.
Deal with them.
Yes.
Oh, how How fucking interesting that is. Yeah, well, I haven't seen them, but that's what I'm hoping to find out. She like points up the trail, not the way you came, but like further up towards the El Paso, like the mining camp. She goes, I'm going up to that goddamn mining camp to get the goddamn truth. And frankly, I don't care how dangerous it is. I would rather face a whole be-fucking mountain of danger than write one more bullshit expose on life on the frontier. Frankly, Mr. Graves, life on the frontier can get all the way fucked. Matter of fact, quote me on that. Life on the frontier can suck my cunt.
I'll make sure the authorities know.
She nods.
Sure you're quoted by name. But until we can get that settled, what have you found here?
Let's go ahead and get the information move from you, I think. This is quite fun. I don't see any of your conditions actually getting in the way of this roll.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so go ahead and roll with presence.
I don't ever got no presents. I should stop using that.
You're such a charismatic bastard.
Okay. Oh god, no, he's not. That's a 7 though.
7.
It's a
awesome.
7. Scooting under.
I will come back to the scene after I've thought about your clue for a moment and a possible complication. Let's move over back down the ridge, down the mountain, back into El Paso. Let's go over to your Graves. Let's go over to Marshal Harrington. Did you select a scene with Lady Antonia that you want to do?
Yes. Lady Antonia can be found in her luxurious suite at the Maxwell Hotel.
So this is where we will open the scene. But first, let's paint the scene, everyone. The room is practically crowded with a vast assortment of luggage Lady Antonia shipped over from London. What sort of oddities related to her work can be found inside the trunks, valises, crates, and hat boxes?
Yeah, one of her hat boxes is tilt the lid of it is tilted slightly. And in it you can see a very rustic, very much handcrafted woven horned crown.
There is like there's the set of vials of something, and it looks thick and red, and they've been sealed with wax.
There is sort of this trunk where typically they would be used to like hang shirts on hangers and whatnot, but instead it is being used to hold weapons of various types, some of which Harrington can recognize. Others, he's not sure what they are. They're just a little bit weird. Like there's an umbrella in there, and he's just like, "What?" Okay.
So Lady Antonia sips from a cup of tea, and she's seated here rather comfortably. And how are you presenting yourself at the moment, Marshal Harrington? How are you garbed, and what is your overall demeanor?
Well, Andrew Harrington looks like himself once again. Just to be polite, not to try to do any sort of funny business, but he has gotten himself in a fairly nice outfit for today. Like something that he would used to wear back in London, sort of type of style, sort of like a nice as you could see what I'm currently wearing, a nice very purple long sleeve shirt as well as a nice purple vest. Just to perhaps smooth things over and be a little bit more respectable than how he's been while he's been in El Paso.
Indeed. As you are standing there, Lady Antonia brings the teacup up to her lips and takes a slow, graceful sip, silent, not even a whisper of a slurp, as the little steam rises off of it here in the morning. And she sets it down on a saucer, then gracefully lowers the saucer to the varnished end table next to the plush armchair she is reclined in. And she clasps her hands in her lap, and she looks at you. Her face is not cold, not quite stoic, but somewhere perfectly placed between comport, benevolence, and an almost chiding humor, right? This kind of the kind of expression you can only get from the British aristocracy or the very rich or both. And she says to you, she has not asked you to sit. She has not invited you to have a drink or get comfortable. And she says, Marshal, in my time here in El Paso, I have found many of the locals to be quite amenable, and though they are of a different cloth cut from the sort I am most accustomed to dealing with back across the pond, as your lot put it, many folk in this territory are quite nice, polite in their own way, customs different, but not unreasonable. There's always a basis of understanding that I feel. You, Marshal Harrington, are one of the most disrespectful, slimy, slippery individuals I've ever had the displeasure of meeting. And yet you are most curious and fascinating, which puts me at the disadvantage of both being repulsed and drawn to an individual such as yourself. I thought my original conversation with you and the terms thereof, that came of that conversation, I should say, were most agreeable, simplistic, and would lead to a productive relationship between my expertise on matters supernatural and your Vigilance Committee's endeavors. Instead, I have not been given any courtesy and rather treated as if I am a snake in the grass. I find myself offended, Marshal Harrington, not only by your behavior, but by... She kind of like furrows her brow and then levies her gaze at you after looking away for a moment. And there's a sudden, like, steely, like, resolute straightforwardness, like a bluntness when she says, the secrets you keep as well.
The secrets I've not shared with anyone else in El Paso.
Indeed.
That's true.
I do not judge one for having secrets. Let me be very clear on that front, Marshal Harrington. I have plenty of my own, and I have many associates back where I come from and further abroad with an absolute bevy of secrets.
Oh, don't I know it? Well, truth be told, I will admit that the jail is probably the only really thing that I probably have offered you to be able to freely use. The silver mine has been a little bit of a complicated matter, as technically it's not the sort of propriety of the township, but more of a private individual. However, I will be honest, I haven't been really pushing too hard on that matter.
Yes, I've noticed.
And Graves, I cannot control Graves.
I never wanted you to control him. I simply wanted a one-on-one private conversation with him, arranged at your hand. But I digress. I'm not here to squabble pettily over demands that have yet to be met. Truth be told, I can seize my own demands if I truly see fit. But what really necessitates this conversation, as I'm sure you are well aware, Mr. Harrington, is the nature of our sordid little evening last night.
Mm-hmm.
You are not what you seem.
No, I'm not.
Are you human, Mr. Graves?
Partially, for
Mm.
my best assumptions, but probably not good enough for the types of people that you've dealt with.
Oh, I might surprise you with my answer to that.
Mm.
I don't judge on the basis of humanity. That is a vague definition, regardless. But your actions speak otherwise. I must know. Do you mean harm to any of the townsfolk here in El Paso that are supposedly under your stewardship as their marshal? Do you have ill intent for this territory?
The only ill intent that I would potentially have would be come from my human side. After all, I've had dealings with your business before. I know of what Hargrave means.
You are familiar with Hargrave House.
Yes.
I believe such was alluded to in one of our first meetings. Your
Mhm.
name was familiar to me in some way or another, though it was not your name, it was the name of your forebears.
Yes.
All the same, we don't necessarily need to speak on matters of the past where they aren't explicitly relevant.
Of course not.
But you clearly have some sort of opinion of my organization.
Mhm.
I invite you to speak freely, Marshal Harrington. Speak your mind. I will not react with hostility or shut down conversations that feel fictitious across my bosom. I'm not some dainty British maid. By all means, speak what your heart demands.
What I figured out that I was not human for the first time was when I encountered my half brother. And we spent some time together, sort of comparing notes, sort of getting familiar because we did not grow up together. It was very fascinating to see how one could be so similar to someone else, but at the same time, there being distinct differences. I had the luxury of being able to hide my inhumanity compared to him. And because of that, he was killed for it by Hargrave.
Is that some sort of ill will you place the responsibility upon me for?
You may not have anything directly to do with it, but I do hold my suspicions because, well, there are rules here in El Paso, and they both apply to the living and dead. They both have rights. And I don't know if you would recognize those.
She was holding her teacup again to prepare another sip, but now she places it to the side and stands, not to square up and confront you, but meets you on a somewhat even level as she moves slowly about the room, just grabbing various things from her suitcases, crates, valises, and whatnot. Almost like a steady unpacking of all of her stuff still as she continues the conversation. And she says, I came to El Paso for many reasons. Chief among them was that matter with the corset. Objects of power are my primary concern. However, I was aware of this Wounded Knight business, as was mentioned. I do not claim to come from afar and bring with me the laws and explicit customs as ironclad writ. I approach every place, every situation, as if it were entirely new territory, which for some it actually is new territory. I've yet to come out here. So I am a visitor in your township, Marshal Harrington. I am a learned scholar of matters most strange, but I am not here to peel and pick at the scab and release the blood from beneath. No, I am much more cautious. You say that the living and the dead have rights here. That is a custom that I do not intend to stand in the way of. Unless, of course, it is directly opposed to my work or the well-being of the community at large. But I'm not going to cast aspersions on one's rights simply because their heart beats or no.
That is fair. It does put me a little bit more at ease. The only other concern would be your behavior last night, in terms of attacking me when you thought I was someone else.
Yes, I do suppose that is a hurdle we must approach now.
I cannot speak freely about that matter. But to you, who was that person?
She clasps her hands behind her back and slowly saunters towards you, closing the gap as her eyes glance off towards the fringes of the room in thought. You can see the corners of her mouth rolling and working subtly as if she were mulling her planned words around in her mouth like fine wine, but there is a hint of displeasure behind that expression. But as she eventually comes to stop about a foot away from you, her gaze leveled with yours, and really up close like this, what is the most striking thing about Lady Antonia? And I don't mean that in a sense of beauty. I mean that in a sense of where you really feel you are standing before not just your superior, but someone who is fathoms, vast leagues more wise and intelligent and experienced than you. Where does that rest in her body or in her expression?
It's being this close to her. It is directly in her eyes. They look at me, trying to perceive me for what I am, taking in every single detail. It is similar to almost a. I know she doesn't like this to be described about this, but it is like a snake in the grass waiting to strike at a little mouse. But there's still humanity there.
She meets your gaze and she says, "Let me tell you about my history with the Wanderer." And we're going to cut away from that for now. Meanwhile, Mother Ruth, you set out from Fort Bliss this morning to head back to Clear Springs. How are you traveling?
I think Mother Ruth awaited for some of her followers to go to Fort Bliss, and then to link up with her, and then as on a cart headed towards Clear Springs.
Are you alone?
I think alone in the back of the cart. I think there's like a gentle woman and a gentle man in the front, wearing that kind of like that garb that the Mother Ruth's followers are typically seen wearing. And she's just sitting in the back of the cart by herself, smoking from a pipe. Strangely enough, she's like seemed to like she'd like nicked it away from her rendezvous last night, and she's smoking from it.
As you're smoking, as the wagon kind of shakes back and forth on the rough trail approaching Clear Springs, though you are still perhaps a couple miles out, what is on your mind at the moment? What are you thinking about?
I think Mother Ruth is just kind of like, it's one of those things of like, when she was very pious, she was very like withdrawn, very reserved. I think she is just kind of fully leaning back, looking up at the sky, looking in the landscape, and I think she's content. I think it's like very much that person that's just had a full meal and had a mug of beer and is having like a cigarette after a good old fashioned like root, a good old fashioned roll in the hay, and it's just like, ah man, life is good, isn't it? Ah, isn't it great?
Hell yeah. The wagon eventually arrives at Clear Springs. We see it parked out front of the Socorro mission, where your two followers and yourself are greeted by the monks of the mission, though there is clearly a tense air about them, not at your visit or the presence of your followers, just from their continued existence in this place. And as you're inside the mission, your two followers are invited to sit in the kitchen, perhaps grab a bowl from the pot that's there. Brother Antonio, Friar Navarro, I believe they're both still alive, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I killed those guys off.
Not yet.
Are walking abreast with you, but you can tell there's a few less monks around than you remember. A couple of faces that the Socorro mission is not particularly vast. In walking around, you're pretty sure that they're missing a few people. But what are you doing?
Navarro,
Mother Ruth.
sorry for my absence for the past day. Other affairs called us. I'm here with some of my congregation. They're going to help around the mission with you. Just any tidy upping that needs to happen. Things of that nature. I was hoping maybe you could walk with me down to the town. We could get a closer look of operations during the day, and maybe we can figure out exactly what's happening with the town.
You're saying this to Hugo?
Yeah.
He swallows a very large lump in his throat, and goes kind of pale, and his eyes flick to Brother Antonio, and then away, and they don't go back to meet your eyes, kind of below and away, as he just shakes his head a little bit and mutters something half-hearted about having to attend to the mission and having so many duties. And it's very clearly an excuse because of how terrified he is. But before he can continue rambling on much longer, before you can interject, Brother Antonio does speak up, which, as a reminder, Brother Antonio is a very youthful monk, very pale as well, though he has a haunted and sullen expression, though the numerous laugh lines betray how much he normally enjoys life. He clears his throat and interjects and says, I, on the other hand, would be more than happy to accompany you, Mother Calvo. I do not have affairs that keep me bound here like the friar.
Apparently, you're the only one with a spine that's made of something other than thin paper. Thank you, Brother Antonio.
The Friar Navarro goes a little red in the face and blusters, but ultimately doesn't say a word, just like turns and walks down the hallway to some other part of the mission, muttering a prayer under his breath. Brother Antonio is walking with you. You two have stepped outside of the mission. He walks, hands at his side. There's not a trace of fear in his body language, but just his face wears very plainly the sullen. It's hard to say like depressed, because that's not quite true. It's very like somber, almost hopeless, like getting to the edge of hopelessness. But and there's behind that the more profound like sense of like haunted. Like you've probably seen your fair share of people, especially in the war, that wore the expression of like, we shall not escape this place and it has left its mark upon us. Like even if we leave, it's going to stay with us. And you're walking with Brother Antonio. Are you walking anywhere in particular, or with any destination?
I would say like the town, like the main street, or if there's like a store or like a main gathering place in the town.
Most of the town is a ruin during the day, if you remember. However, hold on. I'm just reading it because I'm catching back up and the Clear Springs and Kuno are at the other end. There are numerous smashed and dilapidated buildings between, though at night they appear new and whole. Yeah, so right now it's all like dilapidated and in a bad way. Although of course there are people moving about here, going to work in the fields or carrying buckets of water through the town, eyes at their task, living out as if this place were completely normal. I feel like I had previously mentioned that the only intact building was the town, but now I can't, or sorry, that was the shop, but now I can't actually like, oh no, yes, except for the Clear Spring shop. That is where it's at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's been a minute since we've run this one, so I'm catching up.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Clear Spring shop is the only brick building in town, and it still stands, which is, why it's not dilapidated. You've seen though at night it appears freshly painted. During the daytime the building stands, but it is not freshly painted. It is weathered and faded. But amidst the other like wise like collapses of the town, it stands as like a lone monolith of what Clear Springs used to be. And of course there's someone inside of it.
Making our way there. Antonio.
Mother Calvo.
Can you answer a question for me?
I would be happy to.
I've always been so concerned with the Catholic Church and the way that you carry yourselves, the forming and the moving, the formations of ritual and all the symbology and everything. Do these things not give you strength?
I, of course, receive strength in my worship to the Lord.
Mm-hmm. But these relics, the blood and the wine and the crucifix and the confessionals, don't these things also provide support structure for you to give you and the other brothers strength? tangible things to keep your faith strong.
Of course they do, Mother
They
Ruth.
they do, but I do see you gentlemen up there in your stone building, shivering, terrified of even going outside into the daily sun. You sit in your mission and you look down upon these ruins here and you tremble instead of strengthening yourself to do his work.
He stops walking. And I think here, I'm going to ask you to make the day move. There's something about Brother Antonio. He is very haunted and very sullen, as was mentioned. And I mean, as you know, as was mentioned to you before, his grandmother is currently one of the new townsfolk that you've spoken to, Clara, who was that very old woman, but apparently has like the youth of a much younger woman, the one who swims in the river, the one that invited you to join her. He clearly has a lot going on and is very affected. I think you casting aspersions on them is risky in this context. So let's have you roll the day move. Unless, of course, you were trying to trigger fire and brimstone, which is a different move entirely that is more specific to this.
No, not yet. I'm
Okay.
trying to test the waters of this guy right now.
Then in that case, what are you afraid of going wrong here?
I'm afraid that he's just going to disregard this as another religious person trying to say that I'm better at religion than you, and not take this as a serious, like, there's something wrong with you and your mission, the fact that you're not able to, like, there's something wrong with your faith. Like you were supposed to be a faith person, and the fact that the gentlemen that stay here will not even go outside does not hold a testament to the power of your faith, and it's a bad look. Essentially, it's like one religious person to another religious person. You're fucking up on your front, and you need to figure it out.
Yeah, I love that. So let's go ahead and roll with presence.
Okay, let me see if there's anything. None of my items can help me with that as well. Okay, I'll just go ahead and roll it. Fuck it, we're here. Let's have fun. All right. Booyakasha, booyakasha. Okay, that is luckily a 7, a 3 and a 2 plus 2. That's a 7.
Okay, not bad. Let's talk about how these actions would leave you vulnerable, and you can choose to back down or go through with it. And what backing down would look like is the fact that you actually didn't say these words and you like bit your tongue before they could come out. A little bit of like retroactive retroactive continuity. I think the vulnerability here is that I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Pardon me. We play in an earlier slot, so my brain doesn't work quite as well.
No, you're fine.
I'm kind of torn, so I'll kind of like vocalize both, and we can kind of lean towards the one that we think is the most interesting if you go with this result. On the one hand, I can see him taking umbrage with you, but not saying it now. There's kind of like that foundation of resentment that might manifest, that would come into the fore somehow. The other angle, though, is that he takes those words to heart, but it means he's going to probably act impulsively or foolishly at some point in the future in an effort to like prove that he does have a spine, that he is strong, right? It's like that's the two directions I'm like leaning on right now.
Oh yeah, no, I like that last one. I like that last one. I love having a man willingly putting himself in danger just to prove himself to me. So yeah, no, I love that.
Go ahead, and I'm gonna manifest this as a condition. Just for the simplicity of it.
Absolutely.
Just saying, how do we want to phrase this? Just kind of like, how would we summarize the fact that Brother Antonio is gonna at some point prove himself to you and do something dumb? as a condition?
We could say something like overbear or like something related to overbearing or like a role model to Antonio or something like that, like or like something that's like not goalpost mover or
what about brother Antonio's moral compass?
yeah we can do that, yeah,
or the guiding hand, how something like that. Anyway, yeah,
Antonio's guiding hand.
Antonio's guiding hand. I like that as a condition a lot. Yeah. He stopped a moment, but you say these words, and for a moment, after it hangs in the air, his expression flickers from this overall sullen demeanor and haunted eyes to the briefest pang of shame, but like but a note of determination behind that to swallow the matter entirely and form some sort of like new resolution to approach this. Just in the moment, he's clearly reckoning with it, but he does meet your eyes after you've spoken plainly. And Brother Antonio says, Mother Calvo, do you mind if I speak plainly to you?
I'd appreciate it.
He gestures out to the fields, and though while you can't see anyone there right now because the fields are farther away and obscured by the dilapidated town, basically what he's gesturing to as he says, you've met that woman. You've met my grandmother.
It would appear.
Yeah, I didn't hear what you said, Wes.
It would appear.
It looks like her, but it doesn't move like her. Doesn't sound like her. My grandmother, Giulietto, she was old, frail. The woman in the fields moves as if she was 20 years younger. I approached her once. As a train goes off in the background, apparently. I know. I approached her once. She invited me to swim with her in the river. And she smiled, but a little too wide. It was like someone else's mouth. I close my eyes, Mother Ruth, and I just see that smile. I hear her voice, even when I'm praying, even when I sleep, inviting me to join her in the river. My grandmother, but not her. I am strong in my faith, Mother Ruth. I assure you I am, but I am weak, I admit, in the face of this trial. What faces do you see that trouble you?
I see weakness. I see failure to recognize something was good when it was, and it was taken from me. That's what I was reminded of by the river and in the mission, Antonio. But that's okay, Antonio. It sounds so foolish to quote scripture at a moment like this, but I like to think of 2 Corinthians 12:9 to be precise. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, I will gather glory in my weaknesses, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. There's no failure in recognizing weakness, Brother Antonio. There's failure in recognizing weakness and not doing anything about it. You see her, and she moves strangely. And I see him, and he moves strangely and does not sound all that familiar of how I remember him. But perhaps they're not trying to reframe it not as a failure to be with them again, but reframe it as a recognition that they need to be put to sleep. They need to rest. And we shall see them again, but only when it's our time to rest. Have recognition of that.
He opens his mouth to say something after a moment, but decides against it and simply nods. And the two of you enter the Clear Spring shop. Let's take a quick break. Let's cut away from Clear Springs and move back over to Graves. Because I owe you a clue. Or rather specifically a clue with a complication. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So here's your complication. I'll preface this in the fiction, which is basically Mel is, you had asked her about like, what she'd seen so far. And Mel basically is going to make a show of complaining, very long-winded as she and very, very foul-mouthed as she is wont to do, about just the hardships of the gig of journalism here, and very clearly drops a few like allusions to the fact that she is all she wants to be more like gussied up, but this dolt, pointing at Bert, lost her like rouges and stuff, and though she doesn't know you have a personal quarters item,
Yes.
that is a collection of powders and rouges, basically if you give up that item, if you remove it and give it to her, then it'll be tit for tat. She'll give you a clue. Now she doesn't know that you have that, and she's not asking you for it, but it's something you intuit during the conversation, and that you can probably exchange to get her to let slip some interesting clues.
I love this. Yes, instantly, because I think he's just been keeping it. Forgot he had it actually until she says this, and is like, wait, I had nothing for this. I was not going to do anything with this. I'm barely used to having a flesh vessel. And so just offers it to her unbidden, like when she mentions it.
She cocks an eyebrow at you, and just like says, "The fuck is that?"
I believe it's what you were wanting. It's not yours, but it can be if you would like it. I'd have no reason to have it anymore.
You just carry around powders and rouges on your person for just any fucking occasion?
And like, I want to make it so clear looking at this dude, he is not kempt, like at all.
Yeah, she's very clearly like a little intrigued and confused about why this unkempt, pale man has collections of makeup at the ready.
Yeah, a friend gave it to me, and they don't need it anymore. And neither do I. I never needed it. But you look like you, or sound like you might. So, would you like it?
Well, aren't you a goddamn angel on this earth? course I'd fucking want it. You see how filthy I look? Water from the basin can only get so much work done. If I'm going to get proper leverage on these miners, they're going to need to get their dicks hard when they see me. You know what I mean?
I actually do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Fucking finally, someone has the inclination to be better prepared than some layabout goddamn fucking bastard shitheads that claim to be a loyal assistant. And you see that Bert's not really like letting it get to him. He just kind of like nodding along. It's like, oh yeah, it's morning. This is a he's just like nodding and is just going about his own little side tasks. But she takes it, like almost like snatches it out of your hand. And quickly goes over to her, the edge of her tent. There's like a little box crate that she sits against and has a little mirror that she pulls out and is looking at her face as she's attending to her makeup. And once all that is said and done, she's done a little bit of the powdering and put a little rouge on. It's not a lot. She doesn't go heavy with it, but it's enough to cover up some of the thicker creases in her face while also accentuating her age in an attractive way. And once all that is said and done, she'll give you a clue, since you had asked like about things that she had seen or noticed thus far. And Mel says, well, that's part of the reason why I'm going up to that fucking camp, right? Because I've heard about these ghostly rangers that went there and have since moved around the area. I want to hear directly from their mouths what they experienced, what happened, and I'm following the trail, as it were. Now, that said, I did hear a little rumor, perhaps, that one of these ghost riders, I guess you call them, has been returning to the tin mine by himself, not as part of the posse. Mighty fucking curious, if you ask me. Don't know the validity of it, but any good reporter follows up on a lead and digs into the truth from there. And I plan to dig all the way to fucking China to get the information I'm looking for. You better believe it.
Well, good news. I think we're on the same boat.
Fucking excellent.
And I think it was that there's another ranger.
Yeah, one of the Ghost Riders keeps returning to the tin mine by himself.
Yes. Do you mind if I accompany you to the mine? I won't get in the way of your business with the miners. I know how that goes. But I am interested in the same claims you are.
I'm going to trigger the day move here because I know that you're in part doing this because Agatha Edwards wanted you to interfere in another newspaper's endeavors, but also because, well, I mean, that's basically the core of it, but I'm just wondering if it's like, there's this risk, right, of Mel not quite trusting you about that. Like, yeah, sure, you've been helpful, and she shouldn't.
She shouldn't.
And not specifically that, like, oh, it's risky because she's gonna know that you are working for the other paper, nothing like that. But I guess like that's the risk here is just the suspicion. So what are you afraid of happening here?
That she is going to be not only vehemently against it, but keep me from getting information about this other Ghost Rider, which is, I am assuming, the fifth one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm into it. You can go ahead and roll the day move. This was going to be plus your, I could see it as presence or composure, but you weren't exactly using buttery words. I could see it being composure just on the grounds of like, it was calm, very much like, I want to just follow you up there for no, other agenda or motive. However, I'm going to give you disadvantage.
Yeah.
Honestly, death touch and you left the dead alone as conditions are just, they speak really well to the fact that there's something kind of weird about you. There's something off about you. And then the omen of the Vrykalakas is very clearly you've got stuff on the mind and you might be clearly having some kind of agenda here. So any of your conditions kind of play into this. So it'll be with disadvantage unless you want to mark an item.
I don't have an item I can mark for this really, because I've already given her the only thing that she's going to give a shit about, really, at least right now. And frankly, I like that because the omen of Rykalakas is also kind of a reason I want to go over there, especially with her and her shit and her spooky photo that I was given. Yeah, no, there's like, even if I fail at helping Agatha Edwards, which, to be frank with you, Death does not really care about.
Yeah.
I care about whatever's going on with this. So I will roll at disadvantage with composure. So we're gonna roll. Oh, cool. That is still an 8.
Even with disadvantage, goddamn.
Yeah, I re-rolled and I got 2 5s and a 2 plus 1.
I'm gonna say that the way you're vulnerable is that while Mel is like buying it and she's just like, and she's like, oh yeah, sure, absolutely, like whatever, clearly doesn't regard you as anything special. Bert is very suspicious of you and he's very loyal to Mel. So he's like,
I love it.
He's watching you. That's not going to be reflected as a condition. But that is very plainly the situation here.
Oh yeah, I'm into it. I'm kind of glad someone actually knows, is smart enough to like notice something there's an ulterior motive. Yeah,
so when you slip in this request to follow along, come to the accompany her to the camp but not get in the way, she's already like moved on to like packing up the camp and is just like hand wave, like, yeah, sure. Like, it just is fully not really paying attention, but does not at all see any reason to say no to you. But off to the side, whether you notice it or not, Bert is giving you a little side eye. His brow furrows and he doesn't say anything and doesn't make a show of being hostile to you or suspicious, but we just see him get a little bit of a shadow over his brow. Something doesn't quite sit right with him about you, especially in context with Mel. And he goes back to his own tasks. He keeps casting glances at you. Something's amiss here.
Smart man.
And the camp will break down, and they're going to begin heading up towards the mining camp. Which, let's talk about the El Paso Tin Smelting and Mining Company campsite. A short distance from the Sawtooth Ridge itself. As you're entering the area, just around you, flint-eyed miners giving you hard stares as you walk by in the company of Mel and Bert. Permeating the air is the smell of chemicals. And over top of that, you can hear someone, probably a foreman, shouting instructions on the other side of the camp. Let's paint the scene. How is this mining camp like its own little society, seemingly cut off from the rest of the world?
They have their own like gardens and stuff, like their own food supplies and everything going on.
I think all of the company buildings are clearly like company buildings and everything was built at once, and it makes it look almost like some sort of like planned community in a weird way. Like it's the buildings are very clearly different than everything we've seen so far.
Outside the miners, it's just really quiet around here. Like when things settle down for the day, there is just, you could just almost hear the wind. It sounds like even that is distant around here.
Despite the hard stares people are giving you, Graves, you can see in their eyes that they do soften slightly at at Mel, especially now that she's a little gussied up with your help. They're not fawning over her, but clearly she is an attractive woman in her own way. So that people, give her a little glance, but are always moving about their business. And Mel's not like unpacking the mules and like making herself comfortable here. She's actually kind of like staying off to the edge of the camp and like rifling through the bags and taking out her notebook and an ink pen and just going through her belongings, and is kind of like listing out the stuff they've already like heard and followed up on thus far. And she's talking about like wanting to go like speak with some miners, and is debating whether or not she's going to approach the foreman directly yet, since it sounds like he's a hard ass. She's just doing the whole like reporter spiel and listing out to Bert, telling him like, that, to get his camera set up and out, she wants to get some photographs of like the cluster of miners, like the filthier the better. She's just running through the gig here. But what are you doing?
Taking mental notes about who she wants to talk to, and then just fucking off with no word. Like, to go find whoever she was going to talk to and go talk to them. Especially if she mentions someone who specifically saw the ghost, or, if it was the foreman, if it was one of the miners, if it was anybody in particular. That's who I'm heading to, because I want to know who this fifth person is.
She doesn't have like a list of names of all the miners she's planning to speak to. She does mention maybe like one or two names of just like, because there are a couple of tin miners who are at Fort Bliss. They're the ones who came down from the camp and told the soldiers about the experience. So that took like 5 seconds to process.
Yeah, I was like, God.
Yeah, there's a couple of miners there, but she's like, it's more of like, secondhand stories, and so she's just going to be approaching miners. She does mention the foreman probably by name, because she could probably have found that out from the miners. So she mentions like him, Charles Bellevue, though she doesn't really know anything about him. It sounds like she's trying to like not go to him first. She's trying to like go around like the just various miners and just ask about their own individual experience, kind of like working her way to the foreman. So how do you want to tackle your approach here?
Just gonna go to the foreman.
Yeah, okay.
I don't need to like pussyfoot around. What, she said be playing. We're gonna go. I don't care about this dude, and he might know shit.
I think Bert notices you beginning to like peel off and walk across the camp, and he reaches out to grab you by the arm, not like forcefully or harshly, but in the way that you would like casually jog up to someone and like, reach out and touch your arm to just like to be like, hey, stop for a second. Do you have long sleeves or short sleeves?
I mean, I think it's like exactly this. There's exposed skin.
It's upper arm. It's not. Okay. He's not grabbing you by the bare form. That'd be a weird place to grab someone. Like,
I don't
casually.
know how forward Bert is.
No, like he like jogs up as Mel is attending to some of the bags and off to herself. He stops you and he kind of like turns you a little half towards him, and in his eyes you see that he's very clearly like there's like a suspicion or like a cautiousness that he's carrying with him. And he just says, "Hey, look, what's your game here?"
There's no game.
You're a member of the El Paso Vigilance Committee. Asked me some questions last night. You come up to our camp today. You ingratiate yourself. You're just doing this out of the goodness of your heart, helping us out and coming up here, and now clearly walking over towards the foreman with an agenda on your eyes.
This isn't out of the goodness of my heart. I'm not a part of the Vigilance Committee because I care so much about the individual, but the whole. And frankly, I'm not concerned about your story or whatever you're doing. I'm concerned about the long term. And if I can get information about what the foreman knows, what the miners know, I don't see how that's any concern to you. Like I said, we're here for the same reasons.
He studies you, and you can read him like a book, right? Like Bert Stevens is not a man who is gung-ho and ready to clash over this and follow the story, whatever the cost. He's a fucking photographer who does not want to be dealing with this ghost business. He's just loyal to his his reporter, to Mel. So there's this mix of like wanting to just like wash his hands of this and walk away, but also clearly something's just not sitting right with him. And I think just the longer you meet his eyes, the bigger the lump in his throat gets, and he just slowly removes his hand from your arm and swallows that lump, and tries to just very casually just be like, okay, you know, and just go back to his own business. But it's still very clear that like, even if he does not think you're here to like in any way fuck with his employer, with his associate, it's still really wigging him out somehow. Like there's something about you that's just really making him on edge. I wonder what it could be.
I wonder, it's so weird. And I think as he leaves, just be seeing you. And it for sure sounds like a threat coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
He doesn't mean it like that, but like it's just sort of how he says everything. And
yeah, and you're making your way across the camp to approach the foreman. Let's go check back in with Marshal Harrington.
Oh, goody.
She says to you, let me tell you about some of my personal history with the Wanderer. There are forces in this world, as you no doubt are aware, that are old, things that have been present for far longer than you or your ancestors have drawn breath. There are matters of gods at play, the forces of the cosmos that move about in strange harmonies, their ripples, their echoes, their harmonies, they all affect the very fabric of the planes, of the world as we know it. Now, I'm not going to speak to you of matters academic regarding the spheres of existence, but I will speak in earthly matters. There are old forces in this world, and events long past, never recorded, long since misinterpreted into myth and religion, have their own players still on the stage. In truth, Marshal Harrington, I have scarcely seen the face you wore last evening, but I have seen it before, and I know well that he should not be here.
I think he is here because I am here.
And why do you think that?
Just a general sense. One notices their own shadow sometimes, and sometimes things can linger within it.
It is true that certain shadows carry a weight into which sink all manner of things, detritus that collects like dirt in the drain. You have not caught some errant bit of filth or debris, though, if that is the truth. You have drawn into your personal vortex a matter most dire. And I know not the true extent of its consequences yet. I cannot see them. And I have a great deal of foresight, not because of any blessed third eye or ability to speak of fortunes and divine events as they have yet to come to pass, but I'm a well-learned, old, and very, very insightful woman, Marshal Harrington. I can see and calculate the movements as I expect them to play out. It's how I've gotten along as I have. One must be able to anticipate the next move on the board.
Do you want to know a theory I have about all this?
You may certainly offer it.
I think I drew the attention of this being because I rejected what was, I think, my intended path. I don't think I was ever meant to be anyone considerably allied to humanity. And maybe this is just a sort of redirection of that.
Perhaps. Perhaps not. But I will say this, Marshal Harrington. Though I have seen that face before, more often than not, in dream, it has been a long age since I've beheld it in person. It's disquieting because he is supposed to be dead.
Lots of things are supposed to be dead here.
Indeed. And matters of death are different in the context of beings such as them, such as him.
But I don't think he's the only player on the board.
Oh, no, most certainly not.
Well,
there are many.
There are many, but I think in terms of defining names, I did find something belonging to Mr. Graves that I think would be very important for you to find out.
Is that so?
Yes, I think this is a good way, because I think the more I talk to you, the more I realize that we are actually aligned in our goals. And I think just to show a bit of good faith from me, it's necessary. And I'm going to pull out the Book of the Dead.
And you show it to Lady Antonia?
Yeah, I show it to Lady Antonia. I see you, Wes, shaking your head.
I kind of want to trigger the day move here. No, let's make it the night move because it's the Book of the Dead. What are you afraid will happen when you give this to her?
Oh, that's an interesting thing.
It's a juicy one.
First of all, what I think will happen is that Lady Antonia will realize what Graves truly is and will think that, oh, this needs to be put to a stop. So, sorry, Graves.
Yeah, it's worse than that. Because this is actually an artifact she is not allowed to touch.
Oh no. Whoops.
Do you back down or go through with it?
I'm going through with it.
All right. It's going to be plus sensitivity. Thankfully, you don't have anything that'll give you disadvantage from this. Oh, 1 second. We're gonna take a quick fast break. I'm getting a phone call. All right, we're back. Sorry to interrupt that scene. We had established the roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, night move. Did you mark anything for advantage?
I got distracted with other things.
No worries.
It's in my personal quarters. Technically, the Book of the Dead is in my personal quarters.
You could mark that for advantage.
Yeah, I probably should because I don't want to like blow up the world. Fuck with grapes a little bit, yeah, but blowing up the world is a little bit much. Apparently it's not even fucking with graves. That's a 12.
It's a 12 on the night move. Fantastic. So you can go ahead and narrate what this looks like and describe the scene. And I'm thinking of what advantage I want to give you. Go ahead and describe some stuff for me.
Yeah, the Book of the Dead was in my coat pocket, and I pull it out as Graves has previously described it being very plain black book with a bunch of different names on it. I don't think I actually allow Lady Antonia to touch it because, again, Lady Antonia has implied that she is otherworldly as well. So who knows what will happen if she were to touch it. I think she probably goes out to like reach it. But I said, no. This is, as you say, an object of power. It contains the names of everyone who is dead and will die.
I'm going to go ahead and give you your advantage now. It's gonna be that you find a clue amidst this scene. It's going to be a clue for the grieving town of Clear Springs, actually, because at some point in your interaction with Lady Antonia here in her hotel room, you will spot amidst her clutter that there are various like newspaper clippings that she has gathered over time. A lot of them pertain to El Paso, probably stuff that like hints towards the Wounded Knight, other environ stuff also from like London. These are all like the pieces that you'd want to put up on a murder board. They have not been put up into a murder board yet, but one clipping does catch your eye. It is about a pending project in Clear Springs. It was never completed because of the tragedy, and that project was a bank that was never completed. That is your clue. But while the scene's playing out, she looks at that book, right? And Lady Antonia is a very composed woman. And even her surprise is subtle and in some way graceful. It is clear on her expression that she is taken completely aback by this. She does not gape. She does not gasp. She does not go pale. There is just merely the faintest quirk of a brow and the way that the edges of her mouth turn not into a frown, but rather slacken, speaks to her surprise. And she just looks at it with this distant stare before eventually pulling her eyes away from it to look at you. You said this was on the possession of Graves.
Yes.
And Chaotic, did you, by the way, think of the question that you wanted to ask as the reward from your side threat? Did you want to ask that question now, just in the fiction?
Yes. It's very blunt, and just to make things, I think, what Andrew already knows. But what is Graves?
Fabulous. Graves is something that used to be a man and is now a sort of hollowed out vessel for death itself.
So that is either a personal quarters item or a clue.
I think I'm gonna just make it a clue because that's just more information.
Hell yeah.
What? Like you can also take something from my actual personal quarters if you ever want.
I already have the Book of the Dead. Like
I don't.
You can. That clue can be given to any threat, so you can kind of hold on to it and ascribe it wherever you see fit. And you know this to be true, that Graves is inhabited, it would seem, by death itself. We'll come back to this scene again. Mother Ruth, back in Clear Springs, you and Brother Antonio had entered the Clear Springs shop. Let's talk about it. Inside are many items you would expect in a small store. It has farm implements for sale on the front deck, and there are brightly colored candies in large glass jars above and behind the cashier. Let's paint the scene. What about this place makes it seem like it was made with a childlike understanding of the world?
None of the labels are spelled correctly, if at all. Like, it's all of the labels for all of the shop items are like almost language. I think it's like we established that was outside of the town as well, like that the town's language doesn't really translate when you look hard at it.
Yeah.
And this inside, even the smallest detail, like it seems like it couldn't get filled in. Like the stuff an adult would look for, like prices.
There's a distinct lack of product on the shelves. Like it seems like it's like for how this town has been described, of like, or not a lack of, there's a distinct like abundance of product on the shelves. Like this town has been in ruins and stuff. You would have thought people would have come and salvaged and grabbed all the things off the shelf and everything like that, but it's just like there's just like so much of it all over the place, just stacked high, almost like there's something wrong with it.
I really don't have anything to add.
Totally. Behind the front desk, there is the shop owner, you would assume, dressed in coveralls and a gray bowler hat. When you enter, flashes a broad grin. He looks suspiciously like an older version of a side character back in El Paso. Who is it? Did they mention a father or uncle dying recently?
Can you repeat that? My brain just like went.
No,
like,
you're totally
my
good.
brain was like, I was like thinking about it.
The proprietor, the owner of this shop, looks suspiciously like a side character from El Paso. Who?
Yeah.
And have they like recently mentioned like a father or uncle that passed away?
Yeah. God dang. Yeah. Looking through here. Who's? Oh God.
I was thinking I was gonna choose myself, and I was like, wait, well, technically it asks, so I'll see what y'all think.
Yeah, I'll say just to keep it in context, or like just kind of like almost like the weirdness of the situation. It looks like almost like a masculine version of Tessa Schuster.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And yeah, and like Tessa has talked about having like an uncle pass away recently out in St. Louis.
Yeah, it makes sense. Very good. Yeah, looks suspiciously like B. Tessa Schuster. And like walks in, and this gentleman goes, welcome to the Clear Springs shop. Name's Malcolm Berry. How can I help you?
Good morning, Malcolm. How have things been today?
Things have been slow. You folk, not from around here. You El Paso folk?
That's correct.
Well, how's sundries back in El Paso? Used to be so unreliable. I tell you what, our supply chain has only improved with that new long haul road that comes out of San Antonio.
Indeed. Indeed. I know quite a bit about that. I'll just be perusing a few things. Anything strange happening recently in town?
Strange, how do you mean?
Oh, just strange happenings in the evening time, things around the river, maybe.
The river is a lovely, idyllic piece of our community. I tell you what, you folk get the pleasure of wading along its shores, maybe dipping your foot in the water, especially on a hot day. It's practically divine. Though most of the folk here toil in the fields to make sure that the vineyards are impeccably maintained and our livelihood well fostered. There's something extra divine about just being able to refresh here in Clear Springs.
I see lots of folk talking about going inside of it and everything. Do you frequent the river yourself quite a bit?
Oh, when I can manage. Everyone here takes a dip or two every so often, especially at night. Once the working day's done, it's absolutely a good reward. My wife, Dolores, she's in the back right now making bonnets, is a fantastic swimmer.
Are you a fantastic swimmer?
I wouldn't say fantastic. I'm more like a dog, paddling away, tongue out.
You do know the town's in ruins, right? Right outside your front doorstep.
Place is a bit of a fixer-upper, but we're coming up in the prosperity once again. Things are looking on the up, which is a great time to get invested in the local businesses. Now, I know you folks might not be needing any farm
I
equipment.
beseech thee to hush thou mouth, close the lips, and hear the word of the Lord right now. Spirit, tell unto me, where's the font of that river? Where's it coming from? Speak to me now, plainly from your lips. No tricks or japes. I need you to speak to me, Spirit.
Are we gonna first trigger Gethsemane or something else? Not Gethsemane.
Yeah.
Is it Gethsemane? Or wait,
it's not Gethsemane. It's Fire and Brimstone. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure if this is Fire and Brimstone.
It's not violating my moral code.
No, it's not
I guess yeah.
So in this case,
I guess just a passionate plea.
Passionate plea. I'm going to say that this will be let's have it be the information move.
Yeah.
Plus
like
sensitivity, and you are most beloved. I'm gonna give you disadvantage because of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's let this ride. I'm feeling dangerous. I use all my personal items at once,
Sensitivity.
It's a 5.
It's a 5. Malcolm just wears that broad grin, though there's something rictus about it as it's just locked in place as you speak. The eyes don't harden, but there is a sudden sensation in the room that makes it feel like you're standing in the presence of a corpse. Though he looks to be quite alive, there's not a chill in the air, but there is just a stillness, a moment, and the tears bubble up the bottom of his eyelids and like spill over the edges, still grinning broadly. His breath becomes more ragged. And though his expression of grinning broadly does not change, he moans and chokes out some wails between his grinning teeth as the tears spill down over his cheeks and drip off from his chin. He starts to cry, ragged and primal, like a child that is like sobbing and weeping, but he's just grinning wide and ear to ear. And because you rolled a miss, here's what's going to happen. Before you get the chance to do anything, remember what we set up with Brother Antonio? Brother Antonio steps forward and his hands, trembling very slightly, reach for his cross. And he holds it out in front of him and almost echoes your words with like intent, like brazenly, like is trying to like back you up, and with hard eyes, and proclaims with the fury of the Lord, more direct, more brusque than the way you phrased it, where there was a type of elegance to the way that you very simply stopped the matter and put it forward. This is fire and brimstone. This is like yelling, proving himself that he's not afraid and that trying to like do this. And Malcolm ceases his weeping. And the eyes go cloudy white for a brief moment and lock directly onto Malcolm. And Malcolm's words are choked off as he staggers slightly and then vomits up a stream of river water that begins to pour out of his mouth. He stumbles back and is desperately clawing at his mouth, neck, and chest, looking to you as there is just water filling his lungs.
I'm gonna put a mask on. I'll mark the darkened threshold. What's
the darkened threshold for you?
I have to narrate a scene of cruelty and depravity.
Do you want to narrate that first, or do you want me to narrate the changed outcome first?
I think it'll. If you allow me to get a little bit of wibbly wobbly timey wimey with it.
Sure.
I think there is a grabbing of Antonio's hands as he's getting impassioned. That we do see that gurgling and everything like that, but we do see like Mother Ruth grab his hand to like steady him, to like calm him. It's like, don't let your emotion get the best of you and everything like that. And I think we cut to ahead of time in the future, them stumbling out of the shop. And Mother Ruth like breathing deeply after everything, and Antonio being confused, and Antonio being like, manner of evil inside, trying to talk about the manner of evil. And I think she grabs the front of his collar and she says, shut up. Do you see what's happening right under your noses? Do you see what's happening right in front of your faces as you look down from that mission? What did we just talk about? Using that weakness and finding power from it. Down, man. Down, boy. Down now. And she like pushes him down to his knees. And she says, you have forgotten the face of the Lord your God. You must find him, you must find within yourself, and you must find in this place the face of God. And she like takes the like crucifix that he was holding and she like pushes it up against his cheek so it's leaving a mark. And she goes, if this is so important to you, do not let go of yourself. Do not intercede when someone is working. Do not intercede when I am working. and like she like leaves it there for a long time, and you see like there's this like youthfulness about her, but it's a youthful anger. It is like it is different from fire and brimstone. It is just like the fact that she's like another person has tried to like help her and put themselves at risk and almost die and everything, and she's like look into this mark so you never forget the sacrifice that he gave for you, so that you may be a shepherd unto the flock that is upon here. I need you to be able to look at this every morning when you wake up, and do not forget that what is your purpose on this plane. Do not put yourself in danger unwillingly like that, or I shall remove you from this mortal coil myself. And then she lets go of it, and the rosary drops, and you can see that there's like blood that's streaming down the cheek, and there's like the cut and a mark of the crucifix in his cheek.
Going back slightly in time to this moment inside the shop when he staggers and begins to vomit forth gouts of river water, when you step forward to him and place your hand against his chest, the water slows and then ceases its flow. He coughs up, bends over, getting the remainder of it out of his lungs, as you glance over at Malcolm, who the tears have stopped flowing in exact time with when Brother Antonio stopped vomiting water. You can still see the remaining trails of the tears against his cheeks, that grin still spread wide, but the ragged sobs have stopped. And opens his mouth to speak, works his lips like his words are stuck in his throat and he can't quite follow the train of thought he was on. And the silence is really profound, a heavy blanket over not just the room of the shop, but over Clear Springs as a whole in this moment. And outside, we just hear kind of like the rusty screech of a weather vane that turns in the wrong direction. That is actually your formal clue, is the fact that that there was a weather vane that turned in the wrong direction. Whether that's something Ruth notices while later walking through the town or notices in this exact moment, I leave up to you. But you will excuse yourself from the scene after you leave with Brother Antonio, and that scene then plays out. And when you're walking away from that scene, this is your consequence. There are many of the eyes of these people in Clear Springs upon you. Workers in the field who have turned to regard you from a distance. The ostensible lawman who occupies the body of one of the nuns is watching you from down the street. Many people have their eyes on you. You're going to take the condition marked by Clear Springs. And Graves, meanwhile, back at the mining camp, you're approaching the foreman. Charles Bellevue is a man with unkempt hair. His face is just smeared with black smudges. He's got what looks to be a habitual just scowl on his face, as he's just like barking out orders to the miners. And on your approach, before you get to him, though, you see him just like yelling out all across the camp, and occasionally pulls miners in, like more like one-on-one, having like a little private chat with them. And in those moments, in what little sliver of privacy is there, you can see him being gentle with the miners, like a mother is with a beloved child. Arm on the shoulder, a fond, encouraging smile, pat on the back, but then, scowling face, yelling out. And when you approach, that scowl does not go away. It doesn't really deepen or intensify, but it's just there. And he like sticks his hands in his pockets and raises his chin slightly and says, "You don't work here. How can I help you?"
I'm from El Paso, the Vigilance Committee.
Oh. Yeah. He scratches at his chin, wipes at his face to perhaps smudge his face further, even though the intent might be to wipe it away. It doesn't really work. He steps in closer to you, and he says, I was wondering if any of you were gonna come around.
Well, I'm here now. What have you seen?
Look, hey, can we not talk out in the open like this?
It's up to you.
Walk with me. And he kind of like, in a similar manner, grabs you by the upper arm to like steer you away from the conversation. Yeah, towards the edge of the camp. And he goes, he says, look, I'm going to level with you right out of the gate. This whole Ghost Riders business, it's put the camp in a state. All right. So I'm more than willing to cooperate. I just want you to know the quicker this can be dealt with, the better. All right. And let's get one thing very straight before we open a dialogue between us. Right. I'm not going to be accused of not taking care of my people. The fat cats back east, those that own this mine, they might think these working men and women are disposable. Not me. I look out for my people. So I don't want this conversation to start with you thinking I'm some sort of iron-fisted, cruel oppressor.
I have no intentions to.
I've heard about the Vigilance Committee. You do your work. I do mine. I look out for people and I care for them. So as long as we start with that basis, let's talk.
Good. We're on the same page. I know you're just here doing your job. I know they are. And I'm just here doing my job. And the faster we get this done, the faster I leave. And the faster you can get back to work.
He like points a finger back to where you came. What about those two folks you came in with? They don't look like Vigilance Committee people.
They're not. They're reporters.
Oh, fucking fantastic.
I would advise you to not worry about them. You don't have to engage with them.
And I bet that's all because of Fernando. Yeah.
Fernando?
Yeah, Fernando da Silva. It's one of my miners. He's, I don't hate him, but I sent him to Fort Bliss to report on what the miners saw. Well, he hasn't come back since. He's been probably too afraid to come back. But, look, he is probably prone to weaving a yarn. I don't blame him. Poor fella shakes even when he's warm. But reporters, that's the last thing I need. It's going to distract everyone from their work. It's going to stir up all manner of business. Folks are jumpy enough as it is.
Well, you're under no obligation to speak to them.
As long as you're not pushing it, yeah.
Oh, I don't care if you talk to them.
Fair enough.
I want you to talk to me. What have you seen? Who's been here?
Well, obviously, the Ghost Riders, as they are, I guess we're calling them now, they came up here, asked about directions to El Paso, looking for Jimmy Pike. I'm sure you know this by now. Pointing them in that direction. And, well, one of them's been coming back.
Which one?
I haven't seen him. I don't think the miners know either. I don't think they know the names, at least. I don't know. Maybe we can find out.
Was he one of the original three?
I don't know.
We need to find out.
All right. Why don't we get an information move on the table as well for anything else of any other pertinent information?
Yeah.
This will be, I think, plus composure again, because again, this is less of convincing or being charismatic. This is a very like level-headed, like I'm focused on my job. I don't care about those people. I'm doing my job. The quicker, the better. We're handling this quickly and efficiently.
Love it. Love it. at disadvantage with any of this.
I don't think this one you're at disadvantage with.
All right, I won't complain about that. It didn't matter. It's a 5.
Incredible. I'm going to say that I'm gonna sit on this for a moment because I want to think about it a little bit more.
Weird we get.
Actually, no, I think I got it right now as I was coming into it. Right now, immediately.
Okay. Yeah,
I was sitting here being like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll give you that 4th condition and force you to mark a mask, or maybe I'll do. Well, I was just really mulling it over, but then I was like, no, let's fucking let's do something else. I think your conversation gets interrupted by a loud rumbling and some cries of alarm, and by the cloud of like dust that like it belches out from one of the mine openings. There's a mine collapse that happens. And various workers are shouting. The foreman, he goes like kind of like pale for a moment, eyes wide in concern and alarm, and immediately like breaks from this conversation, leaps into action, just like barking out orders for mine collapse. This is definitely not a frequent occurrence, but they seem to know at least what to do, and like in the camp is even in a bit of chaos. People are shouting about the miners that are still in there. A lot of it's a bad situation. What do you do, if anything?
Wow. Well, I'm not gonna mark a mask. This is too interesting. You know me. But I think I'm gonna go help.
What does that look like? Yeah.
Well, it depends on what I can do from the outside, because I am still in this mortal frame. But if there are the dead or the dying, that is kind of my business. So I gotta like get up in there, gonna try to get people out, obviously hoping they don't like actually grab my flesh. But I think I'm just gonna try to help like everybody else is trying to help.
Yeah, and you said that you were trying to like you're staying closer to the outside, like you're not really going in. You're more or
well, unless I can go in.
You could run in, like it'll be dangerous.
Yeah. I'll go in.
This is the way I'm going to structure it, right? Like if you're kind of more towards the outside, helping people as they're coming out, like like that, it'll be the day move. If you're running into the mine deeper, night move.
Into the mine. Into
Gotcha.
the mine.
It's going to be the night move with vitality. What are you afraid of happening here?
I'm afraid that my immortal host is not going to be able to actually handle this, and I will die for real.
Yeah. I think it's worse than that, and I mean, like, it's worse than that in a death is pretty bad. It is arguable if it is worse than that you're actually not gonna die yet. Rather, you're gonna get trapped down here, and it'll be a much longer and slow existence in the dark. Like, it's not going to be that there's a collapse and you are crushed to death and you die. No, you'll get stuck down here, and death will experience a slow and agonizing, hopeless demise. I'm going to give you disadvantage because of death touch. Because if anyone brushes up against your bare arms, with their skin, bad times.
Bad times for them. Bad times for them.
Do you want to mark anything for advantage?
Oh, I already rolled.
Well, never mind. Too late.
I didn't have anything for advantage anyway. Oh my god, it's a 5.
5.
That's a 5.
There is a rush that follows as you descend into the hazy, choked maw of this tin mine. The air thick with dust from the rocks, laced with that heavy metallic smell of tin that is being pried from the earth here. And amidst the chaos, the shouts, the remaining tremors of the earth, you in your black gloved hands begin to pull people free and help them. Those who have not suffered the worst of it yet, you do come across, though, the deeper you go, the dead and the dying, and people, though, who are in a bad way but could still be saved. At one point, though, someone who's been pinned underneath a support beam desperately reaches out that you almost passed, and they grab your arm with their bare hand, and they widen their eyes and they expire immediately right then and there upon touching you. That happens more than once, but the truly worst part of it is when you are fairly certain you need to get out of here, that the old earth shifts once again and the rocks come down, and you throw your arms up to defend yourself, and you're not crushed under them, but you find yourself cut off. And you can pull and you can dig, but it's a big collapse, and you can't even hear the shouts of the other miners. You don't see any light anymore. You have only one half-broken lantern that is slowly going out as over the next few hours you wander this vein of the mine and realize with increasing certainty that there is no way out. There is no way out. And so you must just sit in the darkness and wait for either death to come to you or a miraculous savior to come. It is uncertain, but that light slowly fades and extinguishes, and you are left there in the darkness, in the veins of the earth, uncertain if you'll even come back out.
Oh my God. As poetic as it would be for death to die like that, I am going to mark a mask, because I don't think it's narratively appropriate for me to die quite yet.
Which mask would you like to mark?
The moss-covered gate, and if you'll allow me, I will. I kind of want to pull a Wes.
This is a perfect time for the moss-covered gate. Holy shit!
Yeah. And I think that we do see Graves run into the mine and start to try to help, and something stops him just for a second. And we experience this almost in bullet time with him, with the real Bartholomew Graves. And he doesn't want to be here. He wouldn't have ran in here. He wants to leave. He wants to stop all of this. He doesn't want to help anybody. He doesn't even want to be a part of the Vigilance Committee anymore. He just wants to go home. But there is no home to go to anymore, because this is not his life anymore. And he watches from behind his own eyes as his legs move unbidden by some other force that he does not understand, cannot understand from the inside, because death from the inside is ancient and complex and inhuman. It would be like understanding a black hole. It's completely unfathomable in there. And he watches, and he tries to make himself stop, and he realizes he can't. He hasn't been able to for a long time. And so he watches as this thing puts them both in mortal danger time and time again. And he just has to watch. You're muted.
So that will bump your roll up to a 7 to 9, which, as we know, on the night move, there is a complication or a cost, and I will describe what the scene looks like. I'm actually going to take something out of the way Dungeon World, how defying danger works in Dungeon World, because on a 7 to 9 in Dungeon World, it is there will be I will offer you an ugly choice. And because I think this is interesting, because I had two ideas in my head, and I'm like, well, I'm going to have you choose which of these will play out, and I'll narrate it. And they both are tied to things that we've already mentioned. So either you will get out of the mine, after helping, some people, but several of them will have touched your bare skin and will have expired, and whatever that entails. Maybe people saw that, I don't know. Either that happened or that didn't happen, but you are still caught in a collapse. You are not going to be like trapped, as we just explored in that timeline that did not come to pass, but you are effectively going to be trapped in a cave-in, and that will be where your night phase begins. Like, you are either trapped in the mine, and no one, you saved lives, all the ones you could, and you helped get people out, but you yourself are stuck down here to find a way out, maybe with some other miners, who knows, or people died by your hand and you get out of the mine.
Man, that's really tasty. I think it's kind of fun to be in a cave-in, just because that's such a buck wild place to start the night phase.
Yeah.
And I have some thoughts about how maybe it could get more interesting.
Indeed. Then in that case, the scene plays out much the same, except this time we see that those desperate miners, when they reach out to grab you so you don't forget them, with preternatural speed, inhuman instinct, you whip around to grab them with your black gloved hands to stop them from touching your bare flesh with their own. And you look them deep in the eyes, and they are shaken, but you then help them. And in their state, they think nothing of that moment. And you avoid many an accident like that. But there does come that moment when you're helping escort another miner out, their arm around your shoulder, when you feel the tremblings begin in the earth. You can see daylight up ahead, far, distant, and cruel. And as the rocks begin to come down, you just push the miner forward out of the way as the rocks come down atop you, leaving you in the dark. Though this time you can still hear the shouts, distant and muffled now, but you're not so sealed off from the world above that you are, for now, in darkness. And we'll end your day phase scenes there. Let's go back to Andrew now. Before we wrap up the day phase, I will say I feel like we had a really good day phase wrap up for Ruth, unless there was anything you were desperately wanting to do as well. And I know that this has occupied your entire day phase, this conversation, chaotic. But if there is anything else you were hoping to do, we can focus on that, unless we want to return now to the Lady Antonia scene. What are your thoughts?
I'm good with just having the conversation with Lady Antonia, cool, because that's just really interesting.
Cool. Then this scene will be how we wrap up the day phase. Yeah, she looked at the book and she said that this was on Graves' person. And then what happened? I got distracted by the cave-in. I got real invested in that mine scene. Where do we end off with this Lady Antonia scene?
She was just sort of shocked by the book, and
yes, that's right.
Because again, there is more than just that fellow.
Mm-hmm. She looks at the book. Again, you have not given it to her, so she doesn't touch it. She looks at it. You can tell by the way her hands tense slightly that she wants so badly to grab this from you and look at it with her own, with her own personal touch. But she doesn't. She just stays completely composed in her body. But she looks at you after finally tearing her eyes away from the book. She says, "How long Has Mr. Graves been odd? You've noticed, many people have spoken of it, I've heard a tale or two already, that he was shot the night, the very eve of this wounded night's beginning.
Yes. And that is the moments where
do the AC people?
Oh.
I like that all the pauses have been dramatic.
Yeah.
uh,
Do you have to go right now?
I have like 5 minutes.
Okay, we'll wrap the scene then. Cool.
Yes. Where was I? Oh, yes. Yes, ever since he got shot, it's been like this. I think that bullet was meant to kill, but it didn't. Something else crawled inside, and I don't know why.
You don't know why, but I can see it in your eyes, Marshal Harrington. You know what? She like leans forward, very serious, and you can tell that she already knows. Like she can intuit very cleanly by the context, but she's like hanging on it. She wants you to say it to confirm externally.
Death walks in El Paso.
She nods, her eyes locked so firmly onto yours, you almost feel like you might break beneath her gaze for a moment. And though she is resolute and serious, there is a faraway touch of something in her demeanor. You don't know what it is. Is it fear? Is it relief? Is it confusion? Is it love? It's hard to say what's in what echoes of a distant memory of a history could be there. And she does turn away from you after a long moment of holding your eye. And when she speaks her next words, they are not to you. They are to herself. They are to the world, whispered in thought, but you hear them all the same. And she says, "And so our paths cross again, Thanatos." And she looks back at you and she says, "Very well. Things are far more complicated in El Paso than this mere wounded knight business. It is my earnest belief, Marshal Harrington, that this thinning between the worlds of the living and the dead is but a precursor to something far more significant that has been mounting for many, many years and is perhaps coming to its feverish conclusion this season. You and I, we may not get along, we may not see eye to eye, we may have our disagreements, but I think it is in both of our interests, the interest of El Paso, perhaps, if you'll pardon the dramatics, the world itself, that we operate on a similar heading.
Yes.
You don't have to care for me. I don't have to care for you, but we should respect each other's work and we should work together.
Absolutely.
If what you claim is true, and I have every reason to suspect that it is, if one of the four indeed walks through El Paso, if it is the one I once called Thanatos, and many other names before, the man whose face you wore last night, he is one of them, but he is also not one of them. He is not in the company of death. There was a time when they were of similar rank, you could call it, but lines were drawn, factions decided, terms agreed upon.
I don't know where the filters are.
I have to step away real quick.
Okay.
I'm
Damn
sorry.
it. I had a dramatic line I was gonna conclude the session with. Fuck. Here. We're gonna pause All right, so to carry on, she says, there were factions decided, wars waged in a time long before you, even long before I. But there are histories, stories, myths that remain. The man whose face you wore, the man, the thing that is within your shadow that you attracted, you assume, is as I call him, the Wanderer. In truth, they are wanderers once. Tell me, Marshal Harrington, what do you know of the story of Prometheus? And that is where we will end the session.
Ah, good.
Bully for us, huh?
Holy shit!
Let's go to Stars and Wishes.
Everyone's fucking unmuted.
I did write it down in chat. Star for Alex for saying the phrase "get their dicks hard."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had to be true to the spirit of the character of Mel. Mel is supposed to be more foul-mouthed than the text represents, so I wanted to really throw in more stuff.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
I think I don't think we had anything to worry about with that, right?
Mm-hmm. Also, as just as general Star for Graves being just like, oh yeah, I'm just doing all right. Have a makeup kit, why don't you? Bert is just like, I don't like you. I don't know why, but I don't like you. And it's just like, is it because does Bert realize that this is death, or does Bert think like you're trying to get in on like his like plan to get with Mel? Like, who knows? It's equally likely. It could be both at the same time.
It could be both. Death loves older women.
Truly.
Ruth Calvo, just I just like just a mean old lady. I love her. She's ready to fuck people up. Fuck up ghosts, fuck up the living. Who cares? Who knows? And oh god, I wish that the conversation with Lady Antonia did not get interrupted. It was just so cool. And I'm just oh man, it was just but I'm just like, we were just vibing today, and Andrew Harrington got almost no investigation done.
Yeah, got clues. Yeah,
I got a clue just because it was like given to me by resolve, like the mysterious case of Graves.
Get the job done.
It's Andrew Harrington is dealing with worldly powers, but honestly, I think he just feels like he's just getting punked by like these otherworldly powers. Like he's like Del Sol is playing a prank on him. Like he's convinced of that.
Absolutely.
And like he doesn't know how to tell Lady Antonia about it because like he can't talk about it. Like I don't even know if he could talk about Prometheus, if like because of like how stuff is involved with. Oh god, so many stuff this happened.
This is the we're leaning slightly in the direction of the Dark Tower kind of like lore moment where it's just like, let me get real cosmic, like let me get to the real like cosmic fantasy lore that I've built up in the background.
Like it's like there's like all this stuff is happening, and like, oh god, Edward and Isabella Reynolds are just like not much of a problem, which is just very funny.
I need to start handing out mastermind clues. Like I almost did one this session, but I was like, no, that would trigger something. I'll wait for Daniel. It'll be more interesting if we trigger it next time anyway. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do my stars and wishes if you're done, Chaotic. Yeah, I mean, stars to Wes for that Darkened Threshold monologue you gave. That scene played out very, very cruel indeed. But also it felt very in character, and it was a particularly cinematic moment. And just in general, star to your conversation with the friar at the mission, and how that scene played out with Brother Antonio, and then the conversation y'all had. It was a very, very strong like Mother Ruth moment, that I just continue to love your portrayal of this woman. B star to your approach, I guess you could say, with Mel. I like that you went up there and were thinking like, I'm up here to find a corpse, but then you became a camp, and just in general, stars for the way that you maintain that sort of like otherworldliness in your portrayal of Graves. Like no matter what, it's almost always like he's smiling, or at least there's just some kind of like ease in the way he speaks. And obviously props to accepting, to being so enthusiastic about the mine collapse and that scene playing out. There is not a moment when I narrate like a miss on a night move with you, where I narrate like a death of your character, basically, I never doubt the possibility that you might just be like, yeah, curtain, you know, it's always this moment where I'm like, are they gonna, I don't know, we'll see. So your flexibility and enthusiasm for the narrative is always a breath of fresh air. And then, yeah, Chaotic. I know that your entire scene this episode was a prolonged conversation with Lady Antonia, but it was a fucking great like give and take scene. It wasn't just, you know, I was worried at least a little bit at the first that it was going to be just Lady Antonia speaking at you and me expositing, or just me kind of just like driving it. But it became very much like a quid pro quo. Like she gave a little, you gave a little, and that scene had a really great arc where it ended up in being this like place of like, cool, we need to actually work together. Like it seemed like it's like mutual, almost like respect that finally met between these two that were like rubbing against each other in the wrong way since the jump. That was really great scene. Wishes, I obviously want Daniel back because I want Daniel in on all of the stuff that's happening now, because I like his portrayal of Diamond Dave, but also because we're one mastermind clue away from a big thing, and I want him there for that. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how Graves's night phase is gonna play out with him being trapped in a mine, because I love setting up night phases like that. I rarely get to do it, and obviously like more of, I really need to get the masterminds like present in the scene again. It can't just become the Brindle versus cosmology hour. It was great that we did it.
It's a good point in the story to do it.
Good point to do it, and it's like one of those situations where I'm like, cool. I want it to happen. Like this episode is like it's like one in a dozen, right? Like where it's like it is that moment where a lot happens in that, but it doesn't become just that, because then that would like degrade the quality of it over time. So now I'm kind of wanting to like swing the arc back into like the Wounded Knight business, but while still drip feeding it because I have stuff in mind. But yeah, it's all very exciting, and I'm having a great time with all of these scenes as well. So
yeah, like I can help out with like swinging it back to the mastermind stuff, because like I still this upcoming Ducks phase, I do have the assemblage regarding the state of affairs of the township of El Paso. So like I just do that, and I quote unquote like invite the rest of the committee over, but I know like Graves is not going to be there because he's stuck in the mine. Sorry, Graves. But it'll be really fun to get Time and Dave involved with that.
See how Diamond Dave reacts out of an assemblage.
Mm-hmm.
God.
Yeah. Stars for excellent, like Lady Antonia. I always want to say Dantonia for some reason. Lady Antonia, like just stuff going on like with that conversation. I like to see that Harrington and her are a bit like we're seeing the true like the Marshal is like the explorer for El Paso in a way, kind of in a way, where it's just like you are having these conversations with powerful people. We're seeing all different kind of represent. This is a good episode that had like a bunch of different representations of what's going on. I did a big star for the Mel and Graves scene. I can't think of somebody more diametrically opposed to and like how they carry themselves than Mel compared to Graves, and it was really cool and interesting to see that. Um, and Mel is very interesting, cool, and hot, especially when she's talking about cunts and cocks, and so good job on that front. So yeah,
I know
there's
3 swear words.
I can say these 3 swear words, and
They're
it's
the best
okay.
3.
Yeah, I mean, truly. But yeah, and then also just like Alex, like really good, just like working with each of us to make these scenes very effective, and like also like not having Daniel with us and everything, like very good job of like keeping things tense, but also like you are like I know it feels like we don't have a lot of the masterminds because we haven't had a lot of the masterminds because we were threatened into not being able to touch them because we had to deal with the situation involving Graves. Aaron Harrington threatened to lock up anybody that had any interactions with the mastermind. But now we're back to normal. And I think we're going to be having a lot more stuff with it. Especially if I can. If I don't roll so dog shit next time, then maybe, we can have truly awesome things happening as well. That's it. Wishes. I just hope that we're all having a good time. I just hope that you're having a good time.
Mhm.
You should all be having a good time.
Ye-
Maybe.
Yeah.
Who am I to say? That's
Who's to
me.
say? I love it. No, this was, oh my God. It took effort to, like, I was like starring in the chat. Everybody today was so on their game, on their dialogue game. Y'all said some bangers. Like, it was intense. Like, I just, like, I don't think I can even go through and start quoting because there were so many cool lines. Alex, the pacing you did today was so cinematic. I felt like I was watching a television episode because the action was all so different. And then we cut back to Lady Antonia and Harrington, and it would be like this really tense political it felt like a political drama between the two of them, like a supernatural political drama. And that was really a refreshing sort of like contrast to Mother Ruth's, like, the religious drama that you brought, and then the very like action oriented you collapsed a mine over here. Like, that it was beautifully balanced, beautifully balanced. Lady Antonia, I love her to death. Just in general, I loved getting a whole episode with her, especially with Harrington of all fucking people, and getting to hear some of Harrington's backstory, chaotic, just like kind of sprinkled in, just a little scooch about your brother. I was like, ooh, you know a Hargrave house? Okay, that's spicy. Lady Antonia being name dropping people. Huh, I have thoughts. And chaotic messaged me about you, like, should I show her the book? And I was like, yes, galaxy brain shit. That was a really fun way to use that item. And I really, really loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Wes, I have to echo what Alex said about that darkened threshold. I was like on the edge of my seat. It was so cool. It was so vivid. Like pressing the cross on the rosary into his cheek. Oh, that's good. And I have to like, I really love how you handle religion with Mother Ruth because you are very versed in it and it feels very natural. And the way you just incorporate it in is so fluid and impressive and really delicious. especially like you started with what I was like, are we going to discuss like the Reformation? What are you doing? Like, it was awesome. And it's really cool to see the dichotomy of her as somebody who's like really into the sin, but also really well versed in the scripture. And that's, you play it really beautifully. And I just want to let you know that. I love it. You all did it was so cool. It was so cool. I loved it. I loved getting to talk to Mel. She's great. Want to hit that. Probably shouldn't, because it'll kill her. Unless, we'll figure it out. But it's fine. I think Bert would try to kill me. But it's great. I love it. 10 out of 10. Wishes. I am excited to see what the mastermind is gonna, like, what that next stage is. I'm excited to see what Diamond Dave does at the Vigilance, not the Vigilance Committee, but the town assemblage, because Jesus Christ, I love Diamond Dave. I'm excited to see what god awful thing happens at Clear Springs. And I'm excited to get out of a mine, or be in a mine and then try to get out. So excited for all of this. All of you are fabulous. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Like, just, everybody's so on their game today.
Awesome. Any other stars or wishes? Then I will see you all later. Let us wave goodbye.